The wind blew fiercely across the battlefield, carrying drops of blood and remnants of the fallen across the barren land. A massive monster roared, opening its mouth armed with countless fangs, and pointed forward menacingly. Kim shouted, gripping his sword, and charged at the beast that wanted to kill him. Without knowing how, he thrust his sword into the monster's mouth, causing it to freeze in confusion. Kim twisted the blade and reached the creature's throat, stopping its whistling sound as it choked on its blood. His hands began to tremble as he realized he was deep inside the monster's mouth, which could close its jaws at any moment. Kim withdrew his sword and fell, realizing the monster was dead. He looked at the corpse and realized he had finally killed the demon with his own hands. However, in a moment of revelation, an angry voice called out to him not to rise. Kim looked up and saw those who had defeated far stronger and more dangerous monsters than the one he had just slain. The angry voice shouted again, annoyed that Kim hadn't completed the task given to him, which was to collect items from the demon's corpse. The main character awoke, apologizing sheepishly to the man, nervously clutching the straps of his backpack. Kim and the porters were described as useless, and the man left angrily, following his friend. Our hero bowed his head, diligently attending to those of higher rank, following them with his gaze and watching where the intense battle was taking place. Demons of various ranks and sizes, released after the abyss was opened, immediately headed towards humans. The brave souls known as the Awakened emerged at the same time the abyss opened and were summoned to fight the monsters. The main character was one who never awakened and had no powers, only desired on the battlefield to carry and collect valuable items from the slain monsters. Kim tore a precious stone from the monster's chest with his bare hands as he worked. As he looked bitterly at the artifact, he realized he had never awakened all these years and had achieved nothing. After gathering everything into his backpack, Kim went to report to those of higher rank, but he was cut off mid-sentence as he noticed a new battle had just erupted. He froze in fear that engulfed him. Before him, he saw a pile of awakened corpses that had fought minutes ago, their blood-soaked bodies lying randomly. At that moment, the main character heard a horrifying voice whispering for him to leave it alone. In front of him stood a huge demon with horns and 6 arms, without a mouth on its face, only eyes that radiated death to all living beings. The demon was called Asmodeus. Our hero lunged at it, wielding his small sword that seemed insignificant compared to the monster. However, at that moment, Asmodeus struck Kim's hand, who tried to defend himself but fell and was injured. The main character screamed in pain, clutching his bleeding elbow. Everything beneath him felt shattered. Kim, holding back tears, turned and glared hatefully at the monster that had just taken his hand. At that moment, lightning from the creature's hand struck Kim's forehead, causing him to smile in confusion. However, upon seeing his killer, the main character realizes his life is about to end. Blood flowed from his head, tears streamed from his eyes. He understood that this was the final moment of his life. Kim's life flashed before his eyes, the car accident that killed his parents, and the bullying at school. He was furious that he had to die like this, a defeated porter living in the shadows. But suddenly, he saw a golden staircase descend from the sky. Kim heard that the conditions for awakening had been met and couldn't believe his stunned ears. Without thinking that the monster had stopped him and killed him, he saw his body lying at Asmodeus' feet in a pool of blood. A strange figure descended the stairs behind Kim and greeted him, who naively believed Asmodeus wouldn't kill him. Kim turned towards the voice and asked who he was, still in shock. The figure dodged the question, only saying that some called him king and that he was there to grant Kim power. Kim looked at him, trying to understand what he was hearing, and thought he was the one who stopped Asmodeus. However, suddenly he heard a mocking voice telling Kim not to be naive, as if the figure read his mind. The white figure called himself king, telling Kim that he recognized his determination and chose him. Kim shouted in confusion, wanting to know what it meant and why he was chosen. King evaded the answer again, asking Kim to wait, mocking the main character. Kim didn't understand what was happening and tried to grasp what he was hearing, without realizing the whole situation. At that moment, the monster lunged at him and King with terrifying speed, its mouth open. The main character suddenly realized that he couldn't awaken and heard familiar voices. One of them was Beak's voice. With difficulty, Kim opened his eyes slightly and saw the men who bullied him at school. Beak, the main bully, punched Kim's cheek from behind, waking him up and laughing heartily. The red-haired main character held his shirt while 2 friends behind him smiled, enjoying what was happening. Kim tried to understand why he was back at school and why he was young again, without realizing the bullies continued to slap his cheeks. But he came back to his senses and remembered that the White King had chosen him. Suddenly, the main character noticed an awakening window that gave him an F rank and predator ability. This realization made Kim smile and laugh. Beak paused, still raising his hand, not understanding why the boy he hit suddenly laughed. The redhead released the main character, thinking he had gone mad from the repeated blows. The leader of the bullies was furious, shouting that Kim was only provoking him. However, he didn't see the fist coming towards his face. With all his strength in his left hand, the main character punched Beak's cheek with his knuckles, throwing the bully several meters away and falling among his friends who didn't understand what was happening. At that moment, they realized Kim had truly awakened, bringing tears to his eyes. The three fell silent in shock, while Beak lay on the ground, struck by the blow. Kim wiped his blood-soaked cheek with his fist. At that moment, the bully's friends ran towards Kim, one of them producing fire from his hands, while the other had ice. Kim skillfully dodged the fire punch and ducked under the enemy's arm. The next moment, he delivered a powerful punch to the bully's jaw, lifting the enemy off the ground. With his right foot, Kim kicked the ice guy in the stomach, throwing him too. The main character remembered how he had tried all his life, doing his best to raise his rank and awaken. He recalled studying all the information about monsters in the abyss, improving his physical condition, and mastering various types of wrestling. Kim knew that he definitely wouldn't lose to trivial people like this. He continued to hit them, pounding them until they fell to the ground, exhausted and unconscious. The main character felt inspired, knowing he could now do everything even though he had to train again, but a sudden voice behind him made him turn sharply. Beak stood up, wiping blood from his face, and from his back emerged lumps like stone. His skin appeared red, his hair rough like stone, and his eyes gleamed red with the intent to kill Kim. The bully swung a punch at Kim, but he managed to dodge the stone fist repeatedly. Kim narrowly escaped his enemy's deadly attacks, but Beak leaped over Kim's head and lunged at him like a cannonball. When he landed, he threw up a cloud of dust, dirt, and stones into the air, leaving a crater where he had jumped. Beak, with his red hair, tried to find Kim amidst the chaos, but Kim was already behind him, ready to deliver a strong punch to the attacker. At that moment, Beak turned and swung his fist at Kim, but missed. Only now did Kim realize that things couldn't be that simple. Beak sneered as he looked at Kim, his bloody fist striking the stone growth on the red-haired man's face. Kim realized he had hurt no one but himself. Beak landed a hard punch to his stomach, sending Kim flying as if he weighed nothing. He landed hard, sliding several meters from the impact. Lying on the ground, Kim struggled to catch his breath and regain his senses, then looked at his attacker angrily. Beak taunted Kim and walked towards him with a smug look. Beak smiled and called Kim insignificant, not believing that he could get up while gathering his thoughts. Kim lay silently, listening to everything Beak said about him, pondering why he was given the lowest rank and why he had acquired the unknown predator skill. However, a force compelled Kim to rise, and his body began to emit a strange blood-red light. He stood up with the conviction that he would not lose, and the red light flickered around him with a strange purple mist. A tornado of red fire swirled around Kim, shocking Beak. Suddenly, he realized that Kim had fully awakened with an unknown power that terrified the red-haired man. Kim felt the magic flowing through him, listening and responding to his every action. His eyes turned red, emitting a dark red light. He was calm and controlled, attacking Beak with renewed strength and powerful strikes. However, he blocked Beak's punches with just one hand, forcing Beak to stop. Beak screamed, not understanding what was happening, and saw a bright flash separating him from Kim. The magic embedded in Beak's stone punch swirled around Kim's hidden hand. The tornado grew stronger, and Kim intensified the vortex around him and Beak. Suddenly, the magic began to seep directly from the stone man's chest, causing him to scream. At that moment, everyone at school was busy with their activities, unaware of the fight happening behind them. After that, the sky lit up with a bright red tornado that landed exactly where Kim and Beak were fighting. Kim stood on his feet, still holding his injured hand in front of him, and Beak was completely exhausted as if all his life force had been drained from him. Beak fell at Kim's feet with a loud thud, unable to do anything more. A pop-up window appeared behind Kim, showing the completion of the absorption and increasing Kim's rank to level A, with his hand now covered in stone growths as he had gained Beak's stone skin skill. Although night had fallen, the school clinic was still open and waiting for visitors. There was only one nurse in the office, who froze in shock upon seeing the men. Kim brought all three of them to the clinic for treatment, and they were awkwardly welcomed. Suddenly, the nurse screamed, asking what had happened to the men. The bully needed extensive help, which took more than a day. The woman emerged as the protagonist with her healing skills forming a bright green field. The nurse asked again about the reason for all these injuries, and Kim couldn't find a better answer than saying they fell down the stairs. Kim felt extremely elated, not only having awakened but also avenging the bully. The only thing he didn't understand was the predator skill. Why was someone with the lowest rank so strong? His rank was not only stronger compared to F rank and comparable to C rank strength, but also capable of increasing it in the first fight while also gaining the enemy's skills. Reflecting on why he was given this power by King, Kim didn't realize how he had already climbed the familiar stairs, seeing the house where he once lived. He decisively decided that he had to learn more about the predator. Kim smiled and looked at the familiar place, remembering how long it had been since he was here. After his parents died, his uncle and family warmly took him in. Kim remembered that the man usually came home late from work, so he decided now was the time to find information about his skill. However, he suddenly heard a voice from his cousin Arthur's room. He looked there and saw the younger one kneeling with 3 people behind him, 2 of whom wore masks and 1 without, clearly the leader. Arthur was surprised to see Kim home from school at that time. Seeing his cousin, Kim didn't understand why his cousin wasn't at school and was crawling on the floor. His attention was drawn to the overturned box on the floor where his family kept all their savings. Kim remembered that Arthur dreamed of befriending bandits and one day running away from home, taking his father's money with him. Kim couldn't believe it was happening today. The leader moved closer to Kim and told him to forget the situation if he didn't want to get hurt. He approached Kim, stared at him sharply, and put his hand on Kim's head. Kim smiled, realizing this was another opportunity to test his inherited skills. The long-haired man didn't have enough time to understand how quickly Kim's fist was approaching his face. With a powerful punch, Kim knocked the leader off his feet and onto the ground. The criminals and Arthur froze in shock, not understanding what had happened. Kim quickly closed the distance and approached the gang leader with the intent to test the predator. The long-haired man tried to dodge and asked Kim to stop. However, Kim was already in front of the leader with his hand outstretched in full determination. Kim froze, waiting to see what would happen and how his skill would manifest, but a pop-up window told him the predator skill was not available at this time. The long-haired man still lay on his back, staring at Kim, not understanding what he intended to do. Kim froze, trying to understand why his skill wasn't active. He didn't realize how the leader's elbow, with no intention of giving up, struck his face hard. Screaming, the long-haired man launched an attack on Kim, landing directly on his jaw. Kim fell, coughing, not having time to regroup or defend himself. At that moment, the leader had already jumped to his feet and his henchmen stood behind him, all ready to kill Kim. The younger one had a C-rank chain skill, and red shackles exploded from his hands. The bully had a poisoning ability, and purple smoke flowed from his hands. The leader had a bleeding skill, releasing lightning from his hands like green thorns. All 3 attacks were directed straight at Kim, who somehow managed to stand at that moment and heard a loud explosion in the house, making pots on the stove jump and the antenna shake, the room filled with smoke and a mix of different colors from the 3 different techniques. All the gang members were sure that Kim was dead. However, Kim quickly ran towards the gang leader and with a powerful punch from his stone fist, he hit the long-haired man again to the ground, causing him to fall. After dealing with the entire gang, he realized 2 things. First, only awakened people could see the status window, which reflected all information about its owner. Second, his passive predator effect was not included in this description. Besides absorbing others' powers, the predator also had the effect of neutralizing the negative consequences of techniques. Kim thought he could only gradually reveal the full essence of the inherited skill. At that moment, Arthur knelt at Kim's feet. The boy lifted his head and screamed that he was sorry for what he had done. Seeing Kim's strong side, he screamed that he was ready to do anything Kim commanded, from licking his feet to barking. While Kim wondered what to do with his sly cousin, Arthur started barking like a dog. Kim didn't care about Arthur's behavior, he was more worried about what would happen next. As our hero thought, his cousin kept barking, trying his best. Kim said he would forgive him on the condition that Arthur goes with him. The old project area is fenced off, with a sign on the gate stating that only authorized personnel are allowed to enter. 3 agents stood staring at the problem they had to solve. Right in front of them was a breach in the abyss gate, teeming with various types of monsters eager to kill them. The group leader, Sam, said that the last breach of the abyss gate happened a few years ago, and now it has appeared here again, with demons starting to creep out. His colleague mentioned that if nothing was done, there would be nothing left before a tragedy occurred, necessitating the evacuation of the surrounding area. Sam assured them that nothing terrible should happen given his barrier skills were at level B and the monsters at the gate were only level C, so he could withstand an attack from any of the demons head-on. Sam extended the barrier with all his might as the leader continued explaining that the strongest creatures at the gate couldn't be stronger than rank C until the barrier behind him collapsed and monsters began to swarm. Sam turned and struck one of the approaching demons with a powerful punch. Even while attacking the creature, he didn't stop talking. Kim and Arthur ran recklessly towards the breached gate, defeating the monsters pouring out of the abyss and piling them up into a disgusting heap of bodies. Sam inspected the corpses, not understanding how these low-ranked demons could breach a level B barrier. He heard a rumbling noise coming from the gate and turned sharply towards it. More monsters started creeping up to the barrier, trying to break through. Suddenly, a man named Varshi appeared there. According to agent protocol, no one should have been there. The 3 froze, staring in horror at the pile of monsters accumulating at the barrier. Suddenly, a demon broke through the barrier's defenses again, and from the collapsing barrier, a new wave of creatures crawled out, wanting the death of all living beings. The monster that broke through was a giant ghoul with a rank higher than the 3 agents combined. Sam realized this was not the C rank they were informed about when they were sent on the mission. At that moment, a loud explosion was heard from the production area, shattering all the windows in the vicinity. Kim and Arthur continued running towards the site, and the small one didn't understand how his cousin knew this disaster would happen. He couldn't explain that he had experienced it before, so the main Kim found nothing better than to lie and say that his prediction had just come true. In this critical situation, Kim asked Arthur to do what they had agreed upon on the way. When Arthur asked what to do with the uncle, the main Kim replied that he would handle these creatures. With determination, he turned into a stone skin and headed for the monster-filled center. At that moment, a man standing by the window said the situation was so dire that the only solution was to awaken the Arank. He turned and begged the man standing behind him for help. That man was Mad Blade, Jack Travis. He was an awakened Arank individual but had the peculiarity of the 8th grade syndrome. Kim killed monster after monster using his stone skin and stone-like fists. He swirled magic around him, absorbing the power of the defeated enemies. Kim realized that last time he didn't activate the predator due to exhaustion, but now he was full of strength. Most skills require the use of mana, but it's not the only essential element. If a mage is exhausted, his power will diminish and eventually deplete. Another important point was that Kim could restore mana by absorbing the souls of monsters. As a result of the battle, the main Kim leveled up to rank D, which made him very happy. He believed that at this rate, he could become an SS rank awakened individual, possibly the first in history to have an SS rank. Kim stopped daydreaming and remembered that he needed to get back to Arthur. However, right in front of him, he saw another awakened man fighting the giant Arank ghoul, wielding a glowing sword. The awakened man cursed and shouted that he would avenge the dead souls. He cried out and yelled that he would judge the monster fairly. Kim found this scene strange and felt embarrassed for his colleague. Blow after blow, the awakened man attacked the ghoul, which emitted something purple, followed by a deafening explosion with yellow sparks shooting into the sky. Kim didn't understand what was happening or if the strange man was still alive. Then he realized that this might be the Arank awakened person who was supposed to resolve this crisis in his past life. Upon seeing him, Kim realized that this was indeed Mad Blade Jack Travis, and he was as strong as people said. However, it was clear that he was as foolish as described by other awakened individuals. Suddenly, Jack clasped his hands in prayer and began repeating that the residents of this area would be safe. However, in Kim's past life, Jack was supposed to be in a different place, fighting ghouls in another part of the city. In the next moment, the main Kim sensed that someone else was using a skill. A madman appeared out of nowhere and stabbed Jack from behind with a sword. He yelled that finally, the Arank awakened had fallen into his hands. At that moment, Arthur stood and saw the nurse sleeping soundly on the sofa in front of him. He was confused, not understanding if it was normal to be in the same room as this woman. On the way to the project, Kim explained to the little one that many people would die today, and one of them was Nurse Miriam Lance. She had to die because she was helping the injured residents at the disaster center. Kim asked Arthur to put the nurse to sleep with his sleep skills and take her far from this place. The boy stood beside the nurse, wondering how his uncle knew all this. Suddenly, a bright awareness broke into his mind, making him open his eyes wide. He concluded that his cousin had vision skills and therefore knew everything that was going to happen. Kim saw the scene unfolding in front of him and realized that something was wrong. Jack turned to face the madman, still standing while holding his wounded stomach, and asked who was in front of him, demanding the stranger reveal himself. The madman was surprised that Jack could stay alive despite the wound affecting his vital organs. Then a wicked smile appeared on his face and he said this would be more interesting. The man was a B-rank villain, Emmett, an awakened individual who committed crimes called a villain. Kim recognized him as the one who killed thousands of people during the gate breach, but the protagonist Mad Blade headed toward the main character Kim, who did not expect such a turn of events. Shocked, Emmett approached closer and stuck out his long and disgusting tongue, but at the same time, the villain was hit by an accurate kick to the jaw, slipping back several meters. Kim realized that there was someone awakened in front of him. Kim raised his hand and mentioned the villain's name and that he had killed many innocent people. The main character was happy to meet him and ready to use his ability on Emmett. Kim's stone hand and the villain's sword clashed in a fierce battle. The madman attacked the main character with full force, trying to kill him. They fought each other repeatedly, defending and attacking with renewed strength. Kim knew that the fact Emmett's attacks didn't work on him was an opportunity to win the fight. At that moment, he used his hiding skill and disappeared from the main character's view. Kim focused all his senses to understand where the villain was hiding. He sensed something behind him and sharply directed an attack on the source of the sound. But the main character was wrong because Emmett was right behind him and smiled, enjoying his victory. In the next moment, the villain attacked Kim again and this time pierced through his stone defense. Blood flowed from the wound and the main character didn't understand how the madman did it. All skills have weaknesses, and sooner or later, the defense would weaken. Emmett continued to attack Kim, causing new wounds that reduced his stone defense. However, now Kim was sure he could survive the fight with the B-rank enemy because his abilities were far above D-rank. At that moment, Kim's words that it was time to end the test confused Emmett and he attacked again towards the victim who was so confident. Kim was happy to meet this villain because he had long wanted to have the hiding skill for himself. Emmett paused, never seeing such power coming from his opponent. The villain used his hiding technique again and started circling Kim, avoiding detection. The main character begins using his predator skills because everyone has weaknesses. While still fighting against monsters from the abyss, he realizes that even when the enemy disappears from his sight, his predator skills will eventually overpower them. Therefore, no matter where Emmett is hiding now, he cannot escape the predator's power. Kim is confident that he can catch the villain because the predator is incredibly strong. Jack lays his head where they just fought the giant ghoul, unable to believe that even a hero like him could die and that his final moment had come. The monster stands tall above him, the ghoul's eyes glowing bright red and steam coming from its mouth. In the next moment, it launches a devastating attack at the spot where the exhausted Jack is lying. However, the spot formed from the hole after the powerful attack is empty. Kim used a hiding technique and pulled Jack out of harm's way at the last moment. The main character realizes that with this skill, the fight will become much easier. The shocked uncle and his wife meet the men at the door and are very frightened. Kim and Arthur greet them awkwardly and announce that they have returned home. Their relatives cannot hold back their tears as they thought the children had been killed by the monsters. Soon after, the news reports a breakthrough into the abyss after 10 years since the last one. The news shows injured agents. Even there, Sam still does not understand why the gate turned into an rank. The police question Mariam, and she tries to explain that she fainted and woke up at home. All the glory of the ghoul's defeat is given to Jack, though he tries desperately to convince the journalists that he did not save the city. Kim is glad there are no words about him in the news and no gain. The main character stands on the old railroad tracks, right in front of the entrance to a dark and abandoned tunnel. This is why our hero came to this dungeon. He needs to hunt, but using his skills without special permission is forbidden. So, Kim decides to explore the dangerous and unexplored tower to collect artifacts. He encounters 3 spider brothers of B rank who decide he could be their feast. Kim is disappointed by their low rank and realizes that to improve his rank, he must kill them. The main character says everything out loud, which angers the spiders, and they attack. They draw paralyzing poison into their mouths and shoot it at Kim. Bright purple beams fly directly at the main character, but he does not move even as the brothers begin to mock him and ask how Kim feels if he is paralyzed. However, the predator skills work again and completely neutralize the spider poison's effects. The brothers are shocked to see him absorb their skills and call them useful. Sounds of screams and battles can be heard from the dungeon, and the status window tells Kim that the paralyzing skill has been recorded. 2 men guard the big door of the player guild. There is the deputy director and personnel officer Aspin Klaus, and he has a guest. The awakened ones who are allowed to use their skills for various purposes are called players. Since there are 5 centers to manage them, the first consists of fighters and is called indivisible. The second is teachers who specialize in alchemy, potions, and the like. The third consists of wizards and they are called sorcerers. The fourth is scouts, surveillance experts, and they are called night crawlers. The fifth is the agency that manages the players and the other 4 centers. Aspin is puzzled because in front of him sits a very unexpected guest, the head of the sorcerers. The night crawler guild's S rank, Karen Katz, and on the other side of the personnel affairs officer is the chairman of the new player guild, Gilbert, who is also S rank. Besides the 5 mentioned, there is also a criminal guild founded by the most notorious criminals. Karen Katz provides information about them to Gilbert who had asked for it. However, the Night Guild leader understands that she was called not just to hand over documents and ask the chairman about it. Surprised by her insight, the chairman smiles and decides to avoid the question. Gilbert then asks Karen directly when she took the player exam to get her license, and she replies that she was 1 year old. After that, the chairman smiles again and asks if a high school student can fight monsters. Kim is still sitting in the same cell on top of a pile of corpses with a backpack full of artifacts, leaning on the skull of one of the monsters. He asks for a number and puts the phone to his ear, contacting one of the 4 chemistry guilds and indifferently stating his desire to buy potions from them. After 7 days of breaking through the abyss, the school doors reopen for students and classes resume. Kim trained hard this week to build his strength and endurance. However, besides physical activities, Kim also cleared many dungeons. The Chemistry Guild is surprised by the number of magic stones Kim managed to bring. But even the rank increase to level C does not inspire Kim because he understands how much work still needs to be done. Moreover, he also has to go to school, where he sits at his desk and carefully looks out the window. His classmates crowd around him and bombard him with questions about how he managed to defeat Beak and his gang. A guy warns the hero that he is now in big trouble. After all, Craig himself, now sitting in front of him with his feet on the table, found out about the incident. He is the leader of the school bully gang and comes from a rich family, as well as being an S rank. James is a member of the big company that sponsors their school, but most importantly, he is the perpetrator of the harassment against Hannah just because she had not awakened. James invites Kim to be friends and starts a conversation that leads to a misunderstanding. In the second conversation, Kim gets angry and asks Craig to stop talking nonsense. These words anger one of James's followers who starts yelling at him. However, the leader's fist forces the follower to shut up and a direct punch lands on the guy's face. He falls, and James is not happy because his subordinate interrupted their conversation. Craig turns to Kim, and flames ignite behind him with his eyes glowing red. Kim is surprised by the power of an awakened S rank and wonders how the Predator would act in a fight with such an opponent. However, at that moment, a blue-haired girl suddenly bursts into the class and asks them to stop. She approaches James and emits a cold blue light, covering one of Craig's followers' hands with ice. She is Allison, an awakened S rank and a part-time guardian expected to become an SS-level player in the future. Then, James says there was a misunderstanding and they were just having a friendly conversation. Allison responds with disbelief, pointing to the guy's broken face. James looks angry and asks her not to cross the line to avoid trouble. Allison then asks Craig to leave everything and exit. The energy emanating from both of them is so strong that Kim thinks it's time for these two to calm down. Craig sharply agrees with Allison, walking towards the exit. However, he turns again and yells that Hyde is very naive if he thinks James will go away like this. He is already gathering a fireball in his hand when suddenly a warning sound breaks the silence. The sound comes from the loudspeakers installed in the hallway and classrooms, and the voice from the loudspeakers announces that the Player Guild will hold a lecture in the main hall and all students must attend immediately. James stops listening to the announcement without extinguishing the fire still burning in his hand. Allison remains ready to fight and asks Craig to join the battle, but with the announcement, he completely turns and leaves the classroom, saying they are lucky today. Allison turns to Kim to ask if he is okay, but he is no longer sitting at his desk. Kim is already at the door and invites the girl to go to the main hall. Soon, the entire school gathers in the hall, waiting for the lecture to begin. The same personnel affairs officer from the guild, Aspen Klaus, speaks from the stage and announces that one of the reasons is to apologize for invading the gate, but the second and more important change is in the player examination. The students whisper, not understanding what this has to do with high school, where qualifications are only given at 1 year old. Aspen announces that starting this year, the Player Guild will allow even high school students to receive recommendations. This announcement causes great shock and excitement in the hall, but Kim is the only one who knows that this selection is already taking place. This exam is being conducted at the moment Aspen speaks from the stage. After all, he has an observational skill in his view that allows him to determine someone's abilities just by looking at them. Aspen was impressed by the improvement in the numbers in this room compared to elsewhere, but among them, there were two most valuable examples Aspen planned to acquire. The first was the fiery child, James Craig, with a total of up to 1 year. The second candidate was the icy Allison Height, whose score was higher than Craig's total points. At that moment, James raised his hand to attract everyone's attention and the speaker to ask a question. Aspen waited with curiosity for the words of the person he had just thought about and hoped it was just a coincidence. Then James asked if there were people who did not deserve to take the test, to which Klaus responded by asking what he meant. James then said while looking at Kim that those who had not awakened did not need to be there because there was no useful information for them. The power of a player lies not only in their rank but also in their ability to handle various situations and knowledge of the abyss, for example. To be one of them, the skills of the awakened person must be tested. James Craig continued to mock Kim, openly stating that those who had not awakened could suffer mental damage just by being in the room. Kim realized that the purpose of this speech was to test whether he was already awakened. Then, Allison intervened in the conversation and asked Craig to shut up immediately, but Kim pulled her back and said he did not need her help, making her retreat in embarrassment. Meanwhile, even Height's intervention did not stop James from attacking. Kim stared at him with his hands in his pockets, clearly disturbed by his opponent's behavior. However, he knew that to gain the recommendation, he did not need to prove anything to anyone since they were already watching him. Aspen noted that there were now 3 candidates he was interested in. Klaus looked at James and bitterly realized that despite his high rank, he was just a bully. His attention was then drawn to the man who had been attacked by Craig a few minutes earlier. Aspen used his skills but could not read Kim's total, which seemed impossible. At that moment, the mysterious young man raised his voice in response to the harassment he had received from the perpetrator and said that James was right, and that he should not be there. With a disdainful tone, he said he would leave.